Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad that you could join us today for a quick introduction to FLX Shade, a durable shade solution that brings a different approach to commercial shade. I'm Therese Welch, product specialist at Commercial Recreation Specialists, and I'll be the moderator for the call today. Before we jump in, just a few quick notes. Today's session is meant to be a high-level overview, so please feel free to submit questions in the chat as we go. We'll have time for Q&A at the end, but if we don't get to your questions during the presentation, we're happy to stay a little longer to discuss. This webinar will be recorded and will be sent to all participants afterward. So with that, I'm happy to hand it over to Ryan Hartberg, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Commercial Rec, who will be leading us through this innovative shade solution. Ryan, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Therese. Everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm extremely excited to be introducing FLX Shade to you for the first time. I'm CRS's Vice President of Sales and Marketing. I've been with the company for almost 8 years, and I can honestly say this is one of the coolest new products that we've ever unveiled and brought to the market. So excited to go over this with you today. If this is your first time, I think you'll be pretty excited to hear about it too. I always like to start off with our purpose, our mission statement at CRS. It's to inspire the human spirit through recreation. We've been inspiring the human spirit for 26 years now, with two of our founders still actively in our business, Ron Romans and Rich Wills. And while FLX Shade's not something that you necessarily play with, it does inspire the human spirit by making you much more comfortable and be able to enjoy the outdoors much longer. For those that are not very familiar with commercial recreation specialists, I wanted to show you just a little bit of the product sets that we do and services that we provide. We are a value-added reseller of many different recreation products, mostly outdoor, but some indoor as well. And this screen allows you to see a little breakdown of some of the categories that we play in, pun intended, that including aqua park inflatables. So we do many products that are in, on, and around the water. We have a full set of land-based solutions, including playgrounds, shade that we'll cover a little bit today, shelters, miniature golf, and a wide gamut of different site amenities. Safety solutions include things and products for the water, but also emergency alert systems and lightning detection systems. I mentioned shade and shelter. We have a whole line of different buildings, pavilions, shade solutions. And then in our services lines, we have master planning and design services. We provide installation of many of the products that we sell, and then also offer maintenance and repair for a number of those services, including splash pads and inflatables, as you can see in the picture. So it's a wide range of products and services. We try to be as full service as we possibly can to make our clients' lives easier. But to the main reason that we're all here is to talk about FLX Shade, this exciting new product that we have available. So today we're going to set the stage as to why shade is important. We're going to go through the features and benefits and some of the early simple specifications and installation process for FLX Shade, show some examples of how it can be used. And then, as Therese said, we'll leave a little bit of time for questions and answers at the very end, should you have them. And we're, again, happy to stay on as long as we need, but we'll respect your time and be done within a half an hour. So with that, setting the stage. So I don't think it's a big secret that there is an increased need for shade in general in the world. People, even since, I hate to say the word, but COVID, we've experienced a lot more demand for outdoor recreation, people getting outside, having fun with their friends and families outdoors. So water parks, campgrounds, city and municipal parks, lakes and ponds, oceans, rivers, etc. It goes on and on. People want to be outside. There's a draw to being outdoors, putting our feet in the sand, touching the grass, feeling water, feeling the fresh air. And that hasn't slowed down at all since 2020 and 2021. There's also, over that same period of time, been an increase in awareness for the effects of sun and heat. Even the phrase heat island has become more prominent over the last few years, a heat island being usually a part of a cityscape where there's a lot of concrete, a lot of asphalt, and a lot of buildings, not as many trees, not as much shade. And so it creates these heat islands that they call them, where the temperature is actually measurably higher than it would be where there's much more grass and parks and trees. The idea of inclusive recreation has also been big for a while now, of how we allow everybody to play together in the same space. And that means anybody of different generations, different abilities, different interests, all being able to recreate in the same area or the same location. So Shade allows us to do some of that better. And then also this idea of how do I maximize the usage of my space? So again, whether it's a for-profit recreation space, an attraction, or it's a municipal, this is free for the community. Both of those people, both of those owners or developers want to use those spaces. There's no sense in building a beautiful park and then having nobody be able to use it because it's just too hot. And then the idea that sometimes umbrellas are just not enough. So sometimes an umbrella is an unrealistic option, or the idea of saying, well, I guess we just won't have shade there is not really a great option. So we think that flex shade might be an option or an alternative in those cases. So why not just put in a typical, what we would refer to as a permanent shade structure or permanent commercial shade structure? So that's always an option. By no means are we anti-permanent shade structure. We, as a company, sell a few different lines of those structures. So we definitely think there's a time and a place for having a large structure, steel poles, and great big fabric canopy. But sometimes that's just not realistic. So where there's space limitations for the shade itself or for the footers, this picture in particular shows some example of one size of footer. So sometimes these footers can go down 10 feet in the ground. And so the overall cost, the size, the equipment that's necessary, the amount of space it takes up, the disruption to the infrastructure, if you have concrete decks, the disruption to the business, if you're looking to run a business or a pool or an attraction, and somebody has to come in and make footers, and it takes a couple of days to do that, and you have heavy equipment in place, all of these things make it sometimes challenging to do that. So again, not that that's bad. There's a time and a place, new construction or during the off season. Those are great times and places to be able to put in a permanent structure. But when you don't have that luxury, you don't have the space, and frankly, sometimes don't have the budget, it's nice to know that there's an alternative. So without further ado, we introduce you to Flex Shade. So this is a revolutionary way to add shade. Something to make it unique is that it can be surface mounted on concrete. So that's one of the things we'll talk a bit about today. It can also be placed in the ground, so in asphalt, and then also in the ground in grass. So that's definitely an option. So some versatility there. The minimal disruption means that we're not either doing any footers because we can surface mount it on top of concrete, or if you have to put it in the ground, it's a much smaller footer size than what we would typically see with larger structures. The footprint, it can be smaller, so there's some flexibility and aesthetic qualities to why you might want to go with a flex shade versus umbrellas versus a larger structure, and also that it's just in general cost effective. The overall cost of the structure a little bit less because just less materials, but you're also saving on shipping because you're shipping less weight and less size of equipment. And then the biggest savings is on the installation, especially if you already have an existing concrete deck and you can surface mount to it. There's no heavy equipment necessary, some small, drills and things like that. No concrete trucks have to be brought in. Usually you're using a couple bags of a Quikrete type setting, a smaller auger or post hole digger. So your overall installation costs are greatly reduced. Sometimes that can be as much as the shade equipment itself. So you're talking about a 50% savings, especially if your own crew can do it and you have some of those tools on hand. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into the product to give you a little bit of why it's so cool and why we think it's such a revolutionary product. This first slide, just to show off a little bit of the technology. So This was originally developed by an inventor who was in the amusement park industry and had been using a similar technology to create attractions, amenities at the amusement parks. And honestly, it came up because he was looking to provide shade in the queue lines where people are waiting in line sometimes for 30 to 60 minutes in the hot sun in some of these attractions down south in the US of how can I provide shade, especially now that, again, we've got concrete there. The park doesn't want to shut down for 3 days or 4 days or longer. And so he used the same technology. This is a 250-pound weight being slung back and forth. And so you see the flexibility and where the name comes from here. All right. And so then also this idea that it was inspired by the palm tree that allows the flexibility without breaking the rod. And so there's a story where there's a storm that came through and you noticed that all of the pine trees were knocked down, but the palm trees were still standing because they were able to bend with the wind. And so this was some part of the inspiration of using this type of flex rod technology, which is a fiberglass and resin blend in the posts instead of a rigid pole. So essentially what this does, in that last video you saw, is acts as like a shock absorber, like a car would be, where instead of having a car run right on the frame of the vehicle, and if you feel every single bump, shock absorbers absorb that bounce. So in a shade, it's actually the updraft, the wind, the up force from the wind that is why you need big footers. It's not actually so the shade structure won't tip over. It's really more so that it doesn't get ripped out of the ground and end up flying around and hurting somebody. So here you can see this is wind gusts of up to 65 miles per hour. The flex rods will bend and absorb that uplift and that updraft. And so then the footers don't need to be quite as big. And so you can't even really see the footers in this picture, even though it's in the grass, because they're very small and covered with grass. This shows a little bit of how that rod will bend and absorb that pressure. So there's a couple of different mounting options we've talked about already. First is the above ground, and second would be below ground. And within each of those, there is a couple of different options. So we're showing here on the left, option A, an above ground mounting system. This is where we would surface mount to 5 inches of reinforced concrete or 3,500 PSI concrete, as long as it's a continuous slab. So we don't advise installing it onto a sidewalk or a small paver, but if it's a continual deck, like a pool deck or other concrete areas at parks, that would be just fine. We're showing an angled mount. There's also a straight mount. So if it were to be up against a fence or a building and you need that straight mount, we also have that available. And then similarly with the below ground mount, you can see at the bottom of that picture, hopefully, that there's a sleeve that would be underground, and that would be encased in concrete. We're looking at about a 10-inch diameter hole for that sleeve. The sleeve itself is just a little over 2 inches, about 3 inches, a little wider than the rod itself. So this can be embedded in grass, asphalt, gravel, or some sort of mix of terrains. The footing itself would only be about 36-inch deep. You'd have about 6 inches of gravel for drainage and then a 30-inch hole for the sleeve itself. So again, much smaller than you would typically see. And again, this comes in this straight mount that we're seeing here, as well as an angled mount to give a similar aesthetic look to the above ground angled mount. Standard sizes and shapes, we have squares, rectangles, and triangles. So in the square, a few different sizes. We're looking at about every 5 feet of dimension for squares. Rectangles starting at 15 feet, going up to 25 feet in one dimension, and then from 20 to 60 feet. The only difference in a rectangle is that we have to have a rod every 30 feet or less. So as you get into the 35 feet to 40 feet and larger, it would add another rod. So you'd have a 6-rod shade instead of a 4-rod, like a square would be. With a triangle, obviously 3 corners, we can get up to 30 feet on the largest on any of the dimensions. And then all the different mounting options are available for all of those sizes and shapes. So we can do custom sizes as well and custom shapes. So we have some photographs you can see, I think behind my head off of the splash pad, there's a red and white arc shape that we can do around splash pads or around other attractions that may be there. So that's an option. We can do some trapezoids. I think we've done some pentagons. So if you have a unique look and shape you're looking for, fine. We can do that. Just require some design time to do it, but we'll have these standard shapes available with pricing. And then we also offer a wide range of colors for the fabric. So anything, we have this vibrant and bold color line, and then the timeless and neutral line as well. These are premium shade fabrics engineered for durability. They come with a 10-year prorated warranty on it, like most commercial shade structures. Blocks up to 95% of UV rays. They are made to allow air to go through. So that's the benefit of shade, is hot air goes up through the fabric and does cools you off from underneath, but that also allows rain to get through. We do have a water resistant, I think it's water resistant / waterproof option if that is desired. It increased the cost a little bit, but for those areas that really require that, that is an option. All right, so we're going to show a couple of different places that we see these commonly used in our world, in the recreation world. First and very commonly is athletic fields. So this is showing some courts or a pool in the background. Any place where you're going to have visitors and onlookers for sporting events, a great place to have shade. People want to be comfortable. They don't want to fry in the sun. So being able to cover bleachers and baseball diamonds. This is showing again tennis courts or pickleball courts. People waiting to use that field or court, soccer fields. These are all great options. And one of the nice things about this is, again, that flex rod is up 2 inches thick. So compared to most commercial shade permanent structures, those can be everything from 6 to 18 inches, can really block sight lines. The flex rod being 2 inches, very inconspicuous, and can be very easy to see around or through even. For the picture behind my head, the splash pad, anything park and rec related. So next to playgrounds, next to splash pad, next to other places where families can play. A great place for setting up your home base. This is where we're going to have our snacks and our drinks and be able to sit and relax and get out of the sun if need be. So a lot of versatility. I want to make sure that I mention too that you can also have a hybrid where maybe like on this red shade, the front rods are embedded in the concrete, the back rods are embedded in the ground, and that is definitely an option. Here's next to a playground. We do have some height limitations, and so yes, unfortunately, we cannot put a flex shade over that Denali tower in the background. That would be too high in the air. We can get standard poles are 10 or 12 feet high. We can do 14-foot flex rods, but beyond that, you start to lose some of the tensioning on the fabric, and you also would lose quite a bit of shade if the sun's not directly overhead. So that's about our limitations, but pretty versatile otherwise. Here it is over a small wading pool in a larger pool environment. So this is a public pool down in Tennessee. So they wanted to cover the kiddie pool, wading pool, and this was a great application for them. Again, fit into a kind of a tight space. They were able to do it in the off season very quickly. Could be worked around actually an open schedule as well. This took about I think it was 3 hours to install with 2 people who had never done it before. So pretty quick installation. I think it's a great aesthetic addition to that pool as well. Food and beverage, very commonplace. Again, people are sitting, trying to enjoy their food and keeps them cool. And so we can do some overlapping shapes, some different parabolic shapes to cover and make it aesthetically pleasing. And then here's actually a picture of it where we have the hybrid front rods are in concrete, back rods are in the ground off of a splash pad covering a table, a picnic bench. I think a couple more here. So there's an in-ground mount next to a pond or a lake. This is the image of the shade we saw earlier that was flapping in the wind. And here we are covering a smaller playground. So if you do have a kiddie playgrounds or low to the ground items, then Flex Shade is a great option. It just can't cover the higher towers. And then just wanted to show one. This is a little difficult to see, but it's an entryway into a building. And so we did design just two rectangles to cover this space. You can see maybe on the bottom right corner, the this design is a second option. That was a series of triangles where they can share a post. We had to put enough rods to have enough tension, but some of the fabric is sharing rods. So we can get to some pretty unique looks and designs and feels that match the aesthetic that you're looking for. So I think that pretty well covers the quick overview of this. Again, we wanted this to be hopefully a first look, kind of wet the whistle a little bit on what this is and how it can be used. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have today, as well as schedule an individual meeting and talk about your specific application. But Therese, any questions?
Yeah, we do have a few questions here. We touched a little bit on the wind rating. Just curious here what the technical rating for wind is on this.
Yeah, good question. So right now we're guaranteeing 60 miles an hour and above. We think that's actually going to get higher, but that's what we're comfortable guaranteeing right now. We're in the middle of doing some actual testing on that in wind tunnels, so we can hopefully increase that. But I think that's a pretty reasonable for non-tornadic or hurricane type situations. And it is relatively easy to take down. So if you know that there's a potential storm coming, it is easy, relatively speaking, easy to take down if you're concerned about that.
All right, thank you. And so you talked a little bit about the height requirements. Can you go over that just again here? What the height of the flex rods are?
Yeah, so the typical surface mount is a 10-foot rod. So that'll be 10 feet. And then the in-ground mount, the typical rod length is 12 feet. You lose almost 2 feet in that embed. So it'll still be around that 10 foot. And that's where we can do a 12 or a 14-foot rod, which can be above ground or in ground. So if you want to get to that 12 to 14-foot height, we can. Obviously, at some heights, again, if the sun's not directly overhead, if it's off, non-summer months, you're losing quite a bit of shade because it can angle underneath that. So always the lower the fabric is to the ground, the better shade coverage you get. Also, that's just the height of the rod. So that can be adjusted. Where the clamp is on the top can be adjusted by the owner. So you can have a 14-foot rod, but still put your eave height at 8 foot if you want to, or 10 foot, and you can adjust it. We've again seen people do parabolic shapes where opposite corners are at different heights. That makes a really great look and can provide some coverage. Or you can angle it toward the sun in different seasons. So, or like for baseball diamonds, you can have the front posts or rods be angled a little bit higher to cover, so you can see the ball go up in the air, but the backside would be a little bit lower to protect from the sun or balls from other fields. So again, some flexibility built into the product on that.
Excellent. And what are the colors of the flex rods?
Standard color is like an off-white. It's essentially a white rod. They can be custom wrapped. So if you have a look and a feel or a color for additional few dollars, it can be custom wrapped with a vinyl wrap. If you're looking for a more economical option, you can go order or buy some like Raptor brand bed liner paint and just paint the rods. So that's something that can be done even after a purchase on site by the owner and can be touched up over time.
Great. And are those poles removable?
Yeah, like I said, pretty easy to remove. So once you release the tension, we have a pulley system that we provide with the product. So you use a pulley to tension the rods to bend them in. That allows you to unhook the chain. And then when you let go slowly of the rope, it just is easy to remove. You release the pressure, there's nothing holding it in place. And so you can easily just slide that out of the bases. So yeah, just the hardest part is just getting the ladder and getting the clamp on and putting a little tension on it. But after that, with no pressure, easy to remove.
Excellent. And you touched a little bit on installation. How much time does that typically take? Can it be self-installed or does it require that professional assistance? Can it be done for this season?
Yes, yeah, great questions. All of the above. So we would say we generally encourage our customers to self-install. We can provide training documents, so it's in writing. We provide training videos, and we can also provide off-site support through the phones and through Microsoft Teams. So it's not terribly difficult. Again, provided you have the right equipment, it's relatively easy to install. So we would say maybe for the first time you ever do it, maybe figure about a 4-hour install. Can go faster if you have folks that are pretty used to doing this type of installation or labor, have all the equipment. Once you get the hang of it, probably 2 hours. So if you're going to be ever installing more than one shade, all the more reason just to do it. It also gives you the practice of putting it up so that you can take it down in the off season if you're in a climate that has snow load. We do recommend taking them down in the winter time. It also saves the fabric from UV rays over time. So yeah, so I think you can cut that down to easily 2 hours once you get the hang of it. But if you can't and don't have the wherewithal, there are installation crews. You could hire a local landscaper. We do have crews that can come out as well, but we've just figured that if it's one fabric or one shade structure and you're not nearby, the cost to fly a crew out is maybe unnecessary. There might be somebody locally who could do it for you if you can't do it yourself.
Excellent. And can you install in sand or go through an existing pond liner?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one. It's a qualified yes. So it depends a little bit on the liner, where the liner ends, how deep the sand is, what's underneath the liner, etc. But we have done installations on beachfronts for man-made ponds that have liners, so it can be done. There's just some particular ways of cutting the liner so that we're not unnecessarily getting undue moisture underneath the liner over time. But look, it's a qualified yes. It's a longer answer that we probably could answer depending on some of the factors, especially if it is man-made. Usually, there's some plans that are available that we can look at and make sure that we're doing it right.
Excellent. And then this question is in regards to permitting and engineered drawings. Typically, are permits needed, and do we provide engineered drawings?
Yeah, I would say typically they're not permitting is not required. It does depend a little bit on your specific city and county, but I would say generally speaking, no. Because the poles are removable, flex shade usually falls under umbrella code in the UBC. So, it's a universal building code. So typically not, but it's good to ask. You want to make sure so you're not presenting any unnecessary problems. And then your second question was on
Engineered drawings.
engineered drawings.
Thank
Again,
you.
typically not required. If it's required, let us know. There's a cost to it to get that done. But I would say again, typically it's not required unless it's a municipal application. Sometimes the municipality may require it. In a private, I would say again, typically not. We've had sometimes like a larger client, Universal Studios may require something, but again, not the norm.
Great. It looks like we have about 2 minutes left on the call. So just another question here. Can these be installed on a deck or patio that is raised so there is no cement for above ground or dirt for in-ground footings?
Yeah, so again, this is a more qualified yes. I would say it can be done. I would try to avoid it if you can because it takes a lot of time and a lot of potential money to do that. But usually what we'll say is we're not going to tell you you can do it. If you want to go get a third party objective structural engineer who can come in and say, yeah, I understand the quality, the footers of this product. That might be something that can be done. We can work with an engineer to create custom brackets if necessary. But if you're looking at a typical wood deck, the wood itself is, and the nails and the screws are going to be may not hold up to that up force. The structure itself might be fine, but it's individual boards. So it really depends on the structure, the structural components of that, the construction of it. So I'm going to say big depends on that, but might be able to be done. We'd have to look at it on a case by case basis.
Great. Thank you for asking or answering those specific questions. I think it's evident through this conversation how flexible this solution truly is.
Yeah,
So, I think if you have more questions, please do reach out. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time and your interest. And hopefully this was a helpful overview so you can understand how FlexShade works, where it can fit, and if it may be worth considering for your space. If there are questions that you wanted to follow up on and stay on the call, we're happy to do so. You're also welcome to reach out afterward at info@crsforrec.com or give us a call 877-896-8442. Thank you all again for being with us today, and we appreciate the opportunity to connect and look forward to speaking with you further. We hope you all have a great rest of your week.
thanks.